Mississippi, 1851. By late summer, the heat at Bulmont Place was the kind that made even dogs surrender on barking. Syrup, thick air clung to your skin. Cicadas screamed from the trees until your ears went numb. Eliza moved through it all as she always had, quiet, efficient, careful. Careful with her hands, careful with her words, careful with her eyes. She had grown up on this land. In the dark, she could walk from the slave quarters to the big house without stubbing a single toe. Before stepping on it, she could tell which board on the kitchen porch would squeak. Long before the sky decided what it wanted, she could hear the difference between thunder and a wagon. By 23, she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. To the other enslaved people, she was Lisa from the big house, the one who carried messages, smuggled leftovers, whispered warnings. To the overseer, she was that house girl, useful enough to keep but never worth knowing. To the ledgers and lists locked in Mr. Beaumont's desk, she was a mere line of ink. Eliza, female, age approx. 23, house servant. The only place she wasn't a small scrap of somebody else's reading was inside her own head. In there, she carried a history that didn't fit on any line. She remembered her mother's hum while braiding Eliza's hair at night. She remembered the sound of auctions in town, the way voices changed when bodies turned into prices. She remembered the day Mrs. Bulmont first noticed she'd grown tall and pretty and said, "We'll move you to the house. You've got the hands for finer work." Eliza had gone from scrubbing troughs to polishing silver, from hauling water to pouring coffee. She learned the precise way Mrs. Beaumont liked her napkin folded, the exact number of sugar lumps the master's guests took. Without having to ask, she also learned something else. The more invisible she made herself, the safer she felt. And she was good at it, until the night he stopped calling her girl. It was the summer after Mrs. Beaumont left. Some people said she'd gone to visit a sick sister in Charleston. Others whispered she'd left because she herself was sick of the heat, sick of the debt piling up on her husband's desk, sick of the way her looks had faded faster than the paint on the parlor walls. Whatever the reason, with her gone, the house felt different. A silence lived in the corners, thick and waiting. That night, after a late supper, Eliza was clearing dishes in the dining room. Mr. Bulmont sat alone at the head of the table, shirt collar loosened, vest unbuttoned. The lamp between them cast a yellow circle of light that made his tired face look even more worn. By his elbow lay the open ledger, numbers marching across the page like ants, kept company by a nearly empty bottle of whiskey. He had barely spoken during the meal. Fork up, fork down, eyes on the ink, not the food. Eliza moved around him, collecting plates, wiping a smear of gravy from the tablecloth with practiced care. "Leave it," he said suddenly. She froze, linen still in hand. "Sir." He stared at the spot under her fingers as if seeing it for the first time. "I said, leave it. There's no point scrubbing away little stains when the whole house is." He trailed off. "Never mind." She straightened, unsure whether to apologize or melt back into the kitchen. The rule in her bones said, "Don't be noticed," but his voice had a raw edge that made ignoring him feel dangerous. "You need more coffee, sir?" she asked. "Or sit?" He cut in. Her heart stuttered. "Sir, I should be." I said sit. Eliza. He'd never used her name like that before. Usually it was girl or you there, or at best, Lisa shouted from down the hall. Hearing the full thing, soft, almost careful, knocked her off balance more than any yell. She lowered herself slowly into the chair halfway down the table, perching on the edge as if ready to bolt. He poured himself another measure of whiskey, then paused. "You want some?" Her eyes widened. "No, sir," he snorted. "Right. Forgot." Not supposed to mix the master's drink with the slave's lips. He took a swallow and winced as it went down. Ridiculous, when you think about what else we mix under this roof. The words made her stomach twist. She knew exactly what he meant. She'd seen the light-skinned children on neighboring plantations. Heard the names people called them when they thought no one was listening. "I don't understand, sir," she lied. "Yes, you do," he said, studying her face. "You've got your mother's eyes. She always understood more than was safe, too." Eliza's fingers tightened in her lap. Her mother had died 3 summers ago, fever taking her fast. The memory still felt like a bruise someone kept bumping into. "I remember when you were little," he went on. "Used to hide under that table when my friends came. Thought if you made yourself small enough, no one could see you." "I was just playing," she said quickly. "You were surviving," he said. "Same thing, most days." The room felt too close. The lamp hissed softly. Outside, a cricket sang on and on like it didn't know how to stop. "Why am I here, sir?" Eliza asked finally. "Did I do something wrong with the dinner?" He laughed. A short, bitter sound. "If you'd done something wrong, you'd be on the other side of my temper." His eyes flicked to the corner where, years ago, a whip had hung on a peg like a decoration. Mrs. Bulmont had made him move it to the barn. "You did everything right." That's the problem. She didn't know what to say to that. He leaned back in his chair, looking at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You know, my wife's not coming back this month. Maybe not next either. Doctor says the sea air is good for her nerves." He made the phrase sound dirty. "Meanwhile, I'm here with a house full of echoes and bills." Eliza shifted. The mention of Mrs. Beaumont sent a prickle of dread up her spine. Whatever this was, she didn't want the mistress's shadow in it. "I'm sorry, sir," she murmured. He watched her a moment longer. "Stand up," he said. Her legs obeyed. "Turn around." She obeyed that too, because what else could she do? She turned slowly, aware of his gaze traveling over her like a hand. He wasn't an ugly man. He wasn't old enough to be her grandfather. Too old to be a boy. Somewhere in there, he'd slipped from one into the other without noticing. "You move quieter than any woman I've ever known," he said. "House runs smoother when you're in it. Fire's lit on time. Coffee's hot. Shirts are pressed. I don't have to hear complaining about the heat or the dust or the neighbors." He stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "Come here, Eliza." Her throat went dry. "Sir, it's late. I should." He stepped closer. The smell of whiskey and sweat and the faint scent of soap wrapped around her. "I'm tired of sleeping alone in a big empty bed in a big empty house. I could go find some whore in town, I suppose. Everybody else does. But I don't want strangers. I want somebody who already knows where the cups are, who won't talk nonsense at breakfast." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "You're a good woman," he said. "You keep my house like it's yours. You might as well keep my nights, too." Her lips parted, words crowding behind them. "I don't want this. You own me already. This ain't a choice." None of them made it out. She thought of the overseer's whip. She thought of her little brother sleeping 3 cabins over. Of what might happen to him if she pushed this man's temper too far. She thought of the way the law talked about people like her as property, as bodies to be used, as things that couldn't be raped because they couldn't say no. "I don't understand," she said weakly. Even though she did, he softened his voice as if they were negotiating something fair. "I'm not asking you to be my wife. The law is never going to see you that way. But under this roof, in this room, when I call, you can be my second wife. The phrase hung there, obscene and strangely tender at the same time.
You'll stay in the house.
You'll eat better than the field hands. If you have children, they'll stay close. I won't sell them off for the first good price that comes along. I'm not a monster, Eliza. I'm a man trying to keep his world from falling apart. A man trying to keep his world, not hers. She remembered Lahi the midwife warning her once in a whisper. If a white man ever start calling you special, you run. If you can't run, you hide. If you can't hide, you make your face a mask and pray. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, only the mask. What if I say no? She asked, because some small, angry part of her refused to let the question die unspoken. His eyes hardened. The softness vanished. Then I can send you back to the fields, or sell you south, or make life for your kin very uncomfortable. You won't be my second anything. You'll just be another body I once fed and stopped. He stepped back half a pace, giving her what he must have thought was space. I'm offering you a better place in a bad world. That's more than most men do. The room swayed. Eliza felt the moment her choices narrowed into one thin line. It wasn't consent. Not really. It was survival dressed in the nearest words it could find. She bowed her head. Yes, sir, she whispered. He exhaled long and slow, as if something heavy had lifted off him, not her. Good. We understand each other. No need for more talking tonight. He touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, like she was something fragile he'd bought at great expense. Go to my room. Blow out the lamp. I'll be there shortly. She walked down the hallway on legs that didn't feel like hers, past the portrait of Mrs. Bulmont hanging over the stairs. The painted eyes watched her go, cold and blind at the same time. That was the night the house changed. In the quarters, people noticed when Eliza stopped sleeping in her old bunk. They noticed when she started wearing a slightly better dress, when she came to the yard less often, when shadows appeared under her eyes that had nothing to do with kitchen work. In the big house, Mr. Bulmont slept easier, woke in better moods, called her Eliza more often, girl less. He started saying we when he talked about the house. We keep this place running. We keep the book straight. We can manage without my wife for a while. He stopped saying my wife like it meant the woman in Charleston. Months passed. The arrangement became a kind of twisted normal. And then, one morning when the air tasted like rain and regret, a letter arrived with a broken seal and a short, neat line of ink. I am returning on the 1st of next month. Margaret Beaumont. Eliza didn't see the letter, but she saw the way Mr. Beaumont's hand shook when he read it. She heard the way he said, "Well, that's that," without looking at her. She felt the house itself stiffen, as if the walls knew. The woman whose name was on everything was coming home. And second wife was not a role that survived when the first one walked back through the door. Margaret Beaumont came home the way she'd left, in a fine carriage with trunks strapped behind, and a letter arriving 2 days too late. The day she returned, the sky was a pale, washed-out blue, and the road from town threw dust on everything that moved. Eliza stood on the front steps with the other servants, dressed clean, apron pressed, hands folded so tight her knuckles ached. Beside her, the butler fidgeted with his collar, and the houseboy shifted from foot to foot. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath. The carriage rolled to a stop. The driver hopped down and opened the door with a little flourish he'd practiced in Charleston. Mrs. Beaumont stepped out, one gloved hand on his arm. She was thinner than Eliza remembered, the sharp bones of her face cutting through the softness she'd had when she left. The months away had turned her into something more precisely lines where curves had been, steel where there had been silk. "Eliza," she said, as if ticking off an item on a list, not greeting a person. "Mom," Eliza murmured, dipping a small curtsy. Mrs. Beaumont's gaze swept over her once, quick and assessing. She noticed everything: the quality of the fabric, the way Eliza's hands were a little smoother now, the faint shadow under her eyes. She cataloged it without changing expression. "House looks settled," she said. The pause before the words spoke volumes. "We've kept it as you left it," Mr. Beaumont answered from the porch. He'd come out smiling, but as his wife approached, the smile collapsed into something more careful. He leaned in to kiss her cheek. She turned just enough that his lips brushed the corner of her jaw instead. "I can tell," she said. "You haven't moved a thing." She meant the furniture. She meant the habits. She meant the way she could feel that a different rhythm had been living inside these walls in her absence. Eliza helped carry the trunks upstairs. In the master bedroom, dust sheets had been pulled off the bed that morning, the mattress beaten, the linens changed. Still, there was a ghost of another life in the room. A faint impression in the mattress, a hair caught in the seam of the pillow, the particular way the nightstand held 2 cups instead of 1. "You can set that there," Mrs. Beaumont said, pointing to the trunk at the foot of the bed. "No, not there. There. It scratches the floor if you slide it too close to the wall." Eliza adjusted the trunk an inch. Mrs. Beaumont watched her, then walked to the wardrobe and opened it. Dresses hung inside, spaced with the precise care of a woman who believed order was half the battle. She ran a hand over the hangers, counting silently, noting the one that had been shifted slightly left. "Has anyone been in my things?" she asked. Eliza swallowed. "Only to dust, ma'am. I folded everything back how I found it." Margaret said. "And how did you find it?" Eliza hesitated, sensing the trap. "Neat," she said. "Like now." A small smile tugged at the corner of Mrs. Beaumont's mouth. "You always were a quick learner. That's why I asked Thomas to bring you into the house in the first place." The way she said his name, Thomas, reminded Eliza that Mrs. Beaumont had known him before ledger books, before whiskey bottles, before he started calling anyone second anything. For the first few days, the house settled into a tense new rhythm. Mrs. Beaumont reasserted herself, like a queen reclaiming a throne someone had been keeping warm. She inspected the pantry, tutted at the state of the linens, reorganized the silver drawer Eliza had arranged with such care months ago. At dinner, she sat at the head of the table again. Mr. Bulmont moved to his rightful place opposite. When Eliza came in with the dishes, Margaret watched the way her husband's eyes followed the curve of Eliza's arm as she poured wine, the way his thanks to her were a fraction warmer than to anyone else. In the mornings, Margaret rang the bell for a maid and waited to see who would answer. Sometimes it was the younger girl from the kitchen. Sometimes, when the house was short-handed or Mr. Bulmont had given an order that overruled quiet sense, it was Eliza. The first time Eliza came into her dressing room, alone carrying a basin of water, Mrs. Beaumont set down her hairbrush and turned in her chair. "Close the door," she said. Eliza did. The click sounded loud as a gunshot in the small room. "Come here," Margaret said. Eliza stepped closer, placing the basin on the washstand. The mirror in front of Mrs. Beaumont caught both their reflections, the mistress in her crisp morning gown, the servant in her plain dress, standing too straight. "How long have you been sleeping in the house?" Margaret asked, as if she were asking how long Eliza had been polishing the silver. Eliza's heart lurched. "I always sleep near the kitchen." "Ma'am, in the house," Margaret repeated, each word clipped. "Not in the quarters, not in the loft over the washroom. In this building, under this roof." "How long?" Eliza stared at the basin. "Since late spring, ma'am," She admitted. Sir said he wanted someone near in case he needed something in the night. In the night, Margaret echoed. Her eyes met Eliza's in the glass. And what did he need? The room swam. There were no safe answers. If she lied too obviously, she'd insult the mistress's intelligence. If she told the truth, she'd be peeling the skin off wounds everyone had been pretending weren't there. He wanted coffee sometimes, Eliza said finally, or the fire stoked, or, Margaret said. She stood up. She moved with the contained grace of a woman, raised to move carefully so her emotions didn't spill out where anyone could see. She crossed the space between them and reached for Eliza's sleeve. Take that off, she said. Eliza froze. Mom. I want to see your arms, Margaret said. You people think we never notice, but a woman knows when her bed has been warmed in her absence. She knows when her husband's temper has changed. She knows when another woman's perfume has been near her pillows. Take it off. Hands shaking, Eliza loosened the buttons at her wrist and rolled the sleeve up to her elbow. Faint bruises bloomed along her forearm. Fingers pressed too hard. A grip meant to hold rather than hurt, but leaving marks all the same. Older marks traced down along her upper arm, half faded, like someone had once grabbed her there in the dark. Margaret's nostrils flared. The overseer, she demanded. No, ma'am, Eliza whispered. Then who? Margaret's voice was soft, dangerous. Who touches you like that? The truth perched on the edge of Eliza's tongue, desperate to leap. Your husband. The man whose name sits next to yours on every letter. The one who talks about our house while using my body as his second bed. She could see, suddenly, the relief in saying it, the bitter satisfaction, the way it might burn this whole twisted arrangement down. She could also see the consequences. Men believed what made their lives easier. If she told Mrs. Bulmont, the story might become the slave tempted me. She's threw herself at me. She's trying to ruin us. The law would back him. The community would nod. A woman of Margaret's breeding might turn that fury anywhere it was allowed to land. At the nearest black body. Eliza pulled the sleeve back down. I fall sometimes, ma'am, she murmured, carrying heavy things. My arms hit table's doors. Nothing more. Margaret held her gaze a long, searching moment. You think I've never seen finger marks on a woman's skin? She asked quietly. My sisters used to hide theirs with scarves when they came to visit. My mother hid hers with powder. We speak in code in drawing rooms, Miss Eliza, but we know violence when we see it. I'm fine, ma'am, Eliza said, the lie tasting like iron. Margaret's mouth went thin. You're not. But this isn't about you being fine. This is about my house being mine. She walked back to her chair and picked up the hairbrush again. From now on, she said, arranging her features into a polished mask. You sleep in the little room at the end of the hall by the linen closet. Door open. If my husband wants coffee at night, the kitchen girl can bring it. If he wants fires stoked, the boy can do it. You don't answer when he calls past sundown. Do you understand? Relief and terror crashed into each other in Eliza's chest.
Yes, madam,
she said. Margaret caught her reflection again in the mirror. And Eliza, yes, ma'am. He insists. Margaret said, voice dropping. You come to me first. Not the other women, not the quarters. Me. I am still mistress of this house, no matter what stories he has been telling you. The rest of the day, Mrs. Beaumont's orders moved through the house like a new current. Furniture shifted back to its old places. Curtains changed. A rug Eliza had come to think of as part of the parlor disappeared, rolled up and sent to the attic. In subtle ways, Margaret restamped herself onto every room. She replaced certain dishes Eliza had been using with others. Not because they were better, but because they were hers. Mr. Bulmont watched all this with a tightening jaw. At supper, he drank more than usual. His laughter at something his wife said came a beat late. When Eliza refilled his glass, his fingers brushed hers in a small, possessive gesture that did not go unnoticed. Later in his study, the argument rose up through the floorboards in sharp, edged sounds. Eliza couldn't catch every word, but she heard enough. My house too, Margaret. My reputation. Parading her around like you were gone. You dared. The word slave cracked through the ceiling like a whip. Then, the phrase second wife spat back with disgust, as if Margaret had choked on it the first time she heard it and had been waiting to throw it back. Eliza sat on the edge of the narrow bed in the linen room, hands over her ears. But sound found its way through the spaces between her fingers. When the voices finally dropped, the house settled into an uneasy quiet. The lamp in the study burned much later than usual. The new rules held for a few nights. Mr. Bulmont went to bed alone, or so it seemed. Eliza kept to her little room, listening to the creaks of the house reorganizing itself around the returned mistress. Then the storm came. It rolled in from the west one evening, a bruised line on the horizon that turned into black clouds and hard rain. Thunder cracked, so close it rattled the dishes in the cupboards. Lightning burned veins of white in the sky. The slaves in the quarters huddled together, remembering other storms, other nights when men took advantage of noise to cover the sounds of fear. In the big house, shutters banged. A draft slipped under doors. The lamp in the hallway flickered. Eliza lay awake, staring at the low ceiling of her room, every muscle tight. She'd never liked storms. As a child, she'd pressed herself against her mother's side and counted the seconds between flash and boom, pretending the numbers meant something. Tonight, she counted the spaces between Mr. and Mrs. Bulmont's raised voices instead. The storm outside had woken something inside them. Arguments that had simmered under politeness now boiled over, loud enough that even the houseboy in the attic could make out scattered words: duty, humiliation, God's order, you and that girl. After a while, the words stopped. The house held a long, strained silence. Lightning flared, thunder chased it. Then, soft as a footstep in a dream, Eliza heard her name. Eliza. Her whole body went rigid. She waited, hoping she'd imagined it. Eliza, the voice repeated. Closer now, right outside her little room. His voice, lower than usual, smoothed by whiskey and stubbornness. She squeezed her eyes shut, prayed he'd go away. Mrs. Bulmont's command rang in her ears. You don't answer when he calls past sundown. The floorboard just outside the door creaked. Knuckles rapped against the frame. I know you're in there, he murmured. I put you here, remember? She stayed still, breath shallow. Maybe if she waited, he'd think she was asleep. Maybe he'd go back to his own bed. Maybe thunder would swallow his need. The latch turned. The door opened a crack. Light from the hallway spilled in, painting a stripe across the floor. His silhouette filled the gap. Playing dead Eliza. He asked quietly, This is my house, my rules, my arrangements. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure he could hear it. Sir, Mrs. Bulmont said. I know what my wife said. He cut in. She forgets whose name paid for these walls. He moved closer. The bed springs creaking as his weight shifted onto the narrow mattress. She thinks she can come back after months away and undo what kept this place from falling apart. She's mistaken. He reached out. His hand found her in the dark with terrifying ease, fingers tracing the curve of her shoulder, the line of her throat. She flinched. Don't, she whispered. Please, she'll hear. She's sleeping off a fit in the next room, he said. This house has weathered worse storms than her temper. Lightning flashed, briefly sketching the angles of his face. In that stark light, He looked less like a man and more like a collection of wants stacked on top of each other too long. "She is my wife," he said, as if reminding himself. "In the eyes of the law, the church, the town, that's worth something. But you—" His hand slid down, stopping where her ribs flared. "You're what keeps me from drowning between all their rules." Tears burned the back of her eyes. "I never asked to be that. I never asked to have to choose between hunger and debt either," he snapped softly. "Life doesn't care what we ask. It gives what it gives." Thunder swallowed the last word. The bed frame groaned. Down the hall, behind a closed door, Margaret Bulmont lay awake, staring at the canopy over her bed. Years of living with a man whose mood shifted, like weather had trained her to sleep through many noises. Tonight, she didn't even pretend. She had heard the argument. She had watched him pour drink after drink. She had seen the way he looked at the ceiling afterward, as if listening for footsteps. When the thunder rolled in, she'd counted heartbeats between flashes the way she had as a girl. But her mind wasn't on the sky. It was on the girl in the linen room, on the finger marks on her arm, on the way Thomas had avoided meeting her eyes when she mentioned Eliza's name at dinner. So when she heard the soft creak of the floorboard outside her door, she didn't flinch. When she heard his footsteps pass her room and head down the hall toward the servants' rooms, something in her that had been clenching for months finally set. He hadn't even tried to come to her first. She waited. The house seemed to lean with her listening. Another board creaked. A door hinge whispered. Then, faintly over the hiss of rain, she heard a voice, not words, just the cadence. His and a softer one answering. She swung her legs out of bed and slid her feet into slippers. Lightning threw her shadow long against the wall. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, her hand lingering for a moment on the carved post of the bed that knew all her old dreams. Then she stepped into the hallway. The storm lit up the window at the end of the corridor, turning the glass into a sheet of white. In between flashes, the hall was dim, lamplight low. Mr. Beaumont had left their bedroom door half open when he went out. A line of light spilled from it like a trail. Margaret didn't follow that trail. She followed the sound, the almost inaudible murmur of his voice behind another door. The door to the small room she herself had ordered Eliza into. She walked slowly, not wanting the floor to betray her too soon. She knew which boards complained. She had lived on this wood longer than he had. The storm helped cover the small sounds of her breathing, the whisper of her nightgown. She came to the doorway, just as lightning forked across the sky, filling the hallway with a brief, stark clarity. Her hand closed around the doorknob. Inside, she could hear the rustle of fabric, the soft, stifled sound of a woman trying not to cry out, a man's low assurances that sounded more like ownership than comfort. Thunder rolled. Margaret turned the knob. The door swung inward, and for the first time, the woman whose name was on the deeds, and the woman whose body had been treated like a secret bedchamber, faced each other, not across a dinner table, not in the reflection of a dressing room mirror, but within the same frame, under the same roof, in the same wrong room. The door swung open on a crack of lightning. For a heartbeat, the room was a photograph burned into Eliza's eyes, the narrow bed, the tangled sheet mistered. Beaumont half, shadowed with his shirt open, Eliza's dress bunched at her thighs, her hands pushing at his chest without enough force to matter. Behind him, framed in the doorway, stood Margaret Beaumont in her nightgown and shawl, hair loose down her back, her face carved out of something harder than bone. Time did something strange. It stretched and snapped all at once. "Thomas," she said. Just his name. No scream, no gasp. Somehow that was worse. He jerked upright as if yanked by a hook. "Margaret, get off her," she said quietly. He moved back, clumsy on the narrow mattress. Eliza grabbed for the sheet, pulling it over her legs. Heat and shame and a sick kind of fury fighting in her chest. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to stand up and shout the truth so loud, it cracked the storm open. Margaret stepped into the room. The space shrank around her. She didn't look at Eliza first. She looked at her husband, taking in the open collar, the flush on his neck, the slight sway in his stance from drink. "Out," she said to him.
No. This is my...
"This," she cut in, eyes flashing, "is the servants' hall, and this is my house. You can decide which of those words matters more to you, but you will not decide it in front of her while you're half undressed." For a moment, Eliza thought he might refuse. His jaw worked. Then something in her gaze made him stumble for the door instead. He brushed past his wife, muttering, "We'll talk about this," as if the situation were an inconvenience, not an earthquake. "Oh, we will," she said. "In the morning, with clear heads and full daylight to see what you've done." He left. The door clicked shut. The storm outside rumbled softer now, as if it too were catching its breath. The small room felt suddenly enormous. Two women standing in the wreckage of a man's choices. Eliza clutched the sheet tighter. "Ma'am, stand up," Margaret said. Eliza's legs trembled as she obeyed. The sheet slipped. She caught it to her chest. Her hair was loose, falling around her shoulders. In another life, she might have looked like any young woman caught in a moment that could ruin her. In this one, ruin had always been the starting point. Margaret looked at her properly now. Not as a piece of the house, not as an extension of the furniture, but as a person who had been in a bed with her husband. "Did he force you?" she asked. The question hit harder than any slap. It had weight. It had history. It came from a woman who knew there were more kinds of force than the kind that left bruises. Eliza swallowed. "He's my master. I'm not allowed to say no." "That's not what I asked," Margaret said. "I asked if he used his hands, his fists, if he held you down, if he threatened to whip you if you didn't." "Never had to. The threat was in the entire world around us. He said if I refused, he could send me south or sell my kin. He said this was a better place in a bad world." Margaret closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were dry and bright. Of course he did. Always so generous with things that were never his to give. She stepped closer. Eliza forced herself not to flinch. Mrs. Bulmont reached out, her fingers hovering for a moment before touching the side of Eliza's face, where no bruise yet bloomed. "How long?" she asked. "How long has he been coming to you like this?" "Since you left, ma'am." "At first," Margaret repeated, as if holding the phrase up to the light. "At first, he said he'd keep my family close." Eliza said, "Not sell my brother. Keep me in the house." He called it an arrangement. Margaret let out a sound that was almost a laugh. "He would. He always did like tidy words for filthy things." She dropped her hand. For a moment, they stood there. A white mistress and a black slave woman, both bound in very different ways to the same man's appetites. "You hate me now," Eliza blurted, the thought breaking free. "You'll send me away. Back to the fields. Or worse." Margaret's expression shifted, something like pain flickering through. "I don't have the luxury of hating you, Eliza. Hatred's a sharp knife. It has to be pointed somewhere the law will allow. And the law says you're a thing." She spat the last word like it disgusted her. "It would be so easy to slap you, blame you, call you a temptress, to tell myself you crept into my bed like a snake and wrapped yourself around my husband and squeezed. That's what my friends would do. That's what their mothers did and their mothers before them. It keeps their heads tidy when they kneel in church. Why don't you?" Eliza asked, almost desperate. "It'd be easier on us both." Because I watched you grow up in this house. I saw your mother bring you in from the sun. Your hair full of burrs, your knees scraped. I saw you hide under my table when my husband's friends got loud and crude. I taught you which fork goes where. I did not, however, teach you to climb into my marital bed. She drew in a breath, steadied herself. He did that. Silence settled like dust. So what happens now? Eliza asked, her voice small. Margaret looked around the cramped little room, the narrow bed, the single chair, the shelf with folded linens. A space she'd claimed as a symbol of taking Eliza out of his reach, now revealed as nothing more than a different kind of cage. Now, she said, I do what women like me have always done. I clean up the mess a man made and pretend it was spring cleaning. She straightened her shoulders. You will move out of this room in the morning, back to the small bed off the kitchen. You will not come to the family side of the house after sundown unless I call you. You will not answer if he calls, no matter how he begs or threatens. You will sleep with other women within earshot. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, Eliza whispered. If he forces his way into a room with you again, Margaret continued, you scream loud enough to wake the cook, the butler, the boy in the attic. Make it so noisy that he can't pretend it was mutual. Embarrassment is the only language men like him respect. The idea of screaming at him felt like trying to scream at the sky. But something in Eliza sat up at the thought. And you? Eliza asked. What will you do? Margaret's jaw clenched. I will remind him in every room, and at every meal, whose name sits where his does in town ledgers and church registers. I will remind him whose father helped him buy this land. I will remind him that whatever he tells himself in the dark, in the light he cannot afford to treat his wife like furniture left in storage. The corner of her mouth twitched. And I will walk into any room I please, especially when he thinks it doesn't belong to me. Eliza looked at her, really looked, at the deep grooves beside her mouth, at the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, etched by years of smiling when she wanted to scream. You're not going to sell me? She asked quietly. Sell you. To punish you for being the body he chose because he knew the law would never call it a crime? No, I am not that lazy. Relief washed through Eliza so sharp it hurt. She sagged back onto the edge of the bed. But, Margaret added, you will never again mistake his attention for protection. Do you hear me? You are safer in the quarters with 100 eyes on you than alone in a hallway where his boots echo. Yes, ma'am, Eliza said. Good, Margaret said. She turned to go, then paused in the doorway. One more thing. Yes, ma'am. If a child comes of this, Margaret said, not looking back. You tell me first. Not him. I will decide what story gets told in this house about whose baby it is. Ice slid down Eliza's spine. What story would you tell? The only one that keeps it alive. Even if that means pretending it belongs to someone else. I'd rather raise a lie in my house than let him sell the truth to the nearest trader. With that, she stepped into the hall and closed the door. The storm outside moved on, leaving the world washed and raw. Inside, the house rearranged itself around a new understanding. There were now 3 people living in a marriage meant for 2, and only one of them had any legal say in the matter. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Bulmont sulked like a man nursing a wound to his pride more than his conscience. He tried twice to catch Eliza alone in a passage. Both times, a door opened nearby. By accident, a voice called her name from another room. Mrs. Bulmont herself appeared at the top of the stairs with some small errand that required Eliza's immediate attention. At dinner, Margaret smiled at her husband in front of guests, refilled his glass, laughed in all the right places. In private, her words had an edge that cut away his self-justifications piece by piece. She didn't scream. She didn't weep. She did something far more dangerous. She remembered. "You told me you couldn't manage this place without me," she said one night in the study, her voice calm. "Then you set up a replacement in a linen room." "That's not fair," he muttered. "Fair," she echoed. "You want to talk to me about fair? Let's start with the number of choices she had compared to you." He could not bear the mirror she held up. Men like him rarely could. He drank more. He went to town more often. Sometimes he came back smelling of perfume, not kept under his own roof. Eliza's life shrank to corridors and kitchens. She moved like a ghost between stove and pantry, careful not to be caught alone in any patch of shadow long enough for the past to repeat itself. Sometimes, when she passed the mistress in the hall, their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Just long enough for a quiet, bitter understanding to pass between them. When the first signs came, the nausea in the mornings, the strange heaviness low in her belly, Eliza tried to pretend they were nothing. Food gone bad, too much bending over the wash, anything but what Lahi the midwife's eyes saw at once. "You carrying?" Lahi said one mild afternoon, her hands firm on Eliza's wrist. "You know whose it is?" Eliza laughed, a short, joyless sound. "Law says everything on this place belongs to him, including whatever grows inside me." Hannah, older now, slower, but still working in the house, clucked her tongue. "Law can say what it wants. Baby going to hear your heartbeat first, not his." Eliza swallowed. "Does it matter? If he can sell it either way?" Hannah hesitated. "You told Miss Margaret." Eliza shook her head. Fear crawled up her throat. She said I should. Said she'd decide what story to tell. "Then you best let her start telling it," Hannah said, "before he decides on his own." That evening, after the table was cleared and the silver polished, Eliza stood outside the parlor doorway, hands damp, heart hammering. Mrs. Bulmont sat by the fire, embroidery in her lap, spectacles perched on the end of her nose. She looked up when the shadow darkened the threshold. "Yes," she said. Eliza began, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something you asked me to tell you first, if it ever happened." Margaret set down her needle. "Come in." Close the door. Eliza did. The click of the latch sounded like a verdict. She did not have to say the word. Margaret's gaze dropped to her still, flat stomach, then back to her face. "How far?" she asked. "Leahy says not long yet. Weeks maybe." Eliza's hands twisted in her apron. "I can fix it if you want. Leahy knows herbs. Other women have done it." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. "No," Margaret said sharply. "No more dying in this house than we can help. Men like my husband take enough without our help." "Then what?" Eliza whispered. "He'll see. He'll know. He'll suspect," Margaret corrected. "Suspicion is not the same as proof. Proof is what men like that trade in. Suspicion is what we live on." She stood and went to the writing desk in the corner. From a drawer, she took out a small book, the household ledger, the one that kept track of flour and candles and shoes, not human lives. She flipped to a fresh page. "What are you doing, ma'am?" Eliza asked. "What I do best," Margaret said. "Putting things in their proper place." She dipped her pen, then wrote in a neat, controlled hand. "Child to be born to house servant Eliza, to be recorded as issue of stable hand Joseph." Eliza blinked. "Joseph. He ain't never touched me. He won't deny it if I tell him to. He owes me 2 favors and his freedom from the lash. The town will believe it. They already think you people tumble together, like puppies when nobody's looking." Eliza winced at the casual cruelty of you people, but she knew who it truly stabbed, not her. The town, the way it chose to see. "And Mr. Beaumont?" she asked. Margaret's grip tightened on the pen. "He will suspect. He will count months on his fingers and look at that child's face." But if he wants to call his wife a liar in public, he'll have to stand up in church and explain why he was in your bed to begin with. She blotted the ink, blew on it gently. He won't. Men like him would rather choke on their own secrets than cough them up in front of their peers.
So the baby stays?
The baby stays. In this house. Not as his heir, not as another second anything. As a servant's child with a stable boy for a father. In the eyes of anyone who asks. Tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks before she could stop them. She pressed her hands to her face. "You're crying," Margaret said, not unkindly. "Because that sounds small to you, doesn't it? Not freedom. Not a new life somewhere north. Just another child in livery under someone else's roof." Eliza shook her head. "I'm crying because it's more than I thought I'd get." They stood there, two women clutching different ends of the same thin mercy. Later, when the child was born, a little girl with skin the color of late summer and eyes that carried too much of Mr. Beaumont's shape in them. Margaret was the first white person to hold her. She cradled the baby in her arms, looking down at the tiny, serious face. "We'll call her Anna," she said. "It's a good, solid name. Could belong to anyone." Eliza, exhausted, watched from the bed. Will you love her?" she asked, surprising herself. Margaret's mouth tightened. "I will keep her alive. I will not sell her. I will not let him arrange her future to suit his needs. Sometimes in this world, that's the only kind of love we get to call our own." When Mr. Beaumont saw the baby for the first time, his face went through 3 expressions, so quickly Eliza barely caught them: recognition, denial, and something like remorse twisted into resentment. "She favors someone," he muttered. "Joseph, obviously," Margaret said smoothly. "You can see it around the mouth." He looked at his wife. She met his gaze without blinking. The ledger with its careful lie tucked safely in her desk. He could have argued. He could have made a scene. He could have shouted, "She's mine," in a voice that would have broken the fragile story his wife had built. He didn't. Pride and fear and habit all choked the words back. If anyone in town ever asked, the story was simple, that one. The little girl in the corner, she's the stable hands, born to the house servant, good with her hands, that one. Quick, quiet. Years later, when Anna had grown tall enough to light lamps without standing on a stool, she would sometimes catch her mother watching her with a look that held grief and something fiercer. "Why you look at me like that?" Anna would ask. "Just counting," Eliza would say. "Counting what? How many nights you've slept in the same bed? How many mornings you've woken up in the same house? How many days in a row your name hasn't been added to somebody's list?" In the end, there was nothing in any legal book that called Eliza a second wife. No marriage certificate, no church record, no line in the plantation ledgers. On paper, she was what she had always been: female, age approx, house servant. The baby was issue of Joseph. Mrs. Beaumont was wife, Mr. Beaumont master. The house intact. The only place the truth lived was in the memory of women, passed in whispers over wash tubs, in midwives' hands, in the quiet nights when storms rolled in and someone stared at a ceiling, listening for footsteps in the hall. No clerk ever wrote. The master used his slave as his second wife. And when the real wife walked into the room, the only thing that saved the child they made was the story she chose to tell. That part survives in stories like this one, told long after the house has rotted and the ledgers have turned to dust.